Welcome to Fandom Power.
I do it every week. I look at all the settings. I look at the board. I look back at the screen and I go, what am I forgetting? I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but here we are. Hey, everybody. It's Wes, Andy, and Hank, and we're back with another episode of the Fan Batch. And I promise one of these weeks I will get the outro right.
It's my favorite part, actually.
My favorite part is actually this experience in general. I love coming together with you guys every weekend. I love bashing this stuff out. It's been the highlight of my week for the last few weeks, and generally has been since we started doing our Star Wars review series. And we've done what? We've done a few now. We've done full season of The Mandalorian. We did 4 episodes of the Clone Wars, and now we're into Order 66. And we had a peppering of some Marvel in there with Fan Division, which I thought was also very fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun with Loki on the horizon. We'll talk turkey offline, but that was my favorite first episode of the 3 series
of a Marvel series.
Just the way that they it had me by 5 minutes in, where the other 2 I had to kind of go. You know, I trusted the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but everybody knows how I felt about the first version of the first Division, the first WandaVision episode, But speaking of just Disney properties, I don't know if you guys have. Tamora Morrison just did an interview, and I can't recall who it was with, but that's probably inconsequential. But the best thing about it was about the Book of Boba Fett, and he let some maybe their spoilers go, and I don't know. So if you guys want to plug your ears, you can if you want. But you can read it, so it's not me, it's them, and him. In fact,
I'm just reiterating what's already
the character of Boba Fett has been stuck in one place for so long that this series is the opportunity to go back into his past and tell his story.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? So he literally spoiled the timeline and said, we're going to find out what happens between or after the Empire Strikes Back and watch.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to be dipping in and out of timelines, I think.
So
we all got the picture that, right. We all got the picture sitting on that throne. He's going to move, that we're going to be the future of Boba Fett as a crime lord. But in fact, maybe that's like we speculated. Maybe that's the seat of the story. And then the story is in the past. And that's awesome. And I don't know how much trouble he's going to get in for this.
Who knows? I think, most of us out there would really like to see, how is he going to make it out of the Sarlacc? You can't tell me you didn't want it. I mean, we've read about it. It's been novelized a couple of times.
There's been fan films about it.
Sure.
2 comic versions of it.
Right. And I think if anything, we're all kind of clamoring for that one. And
finally make it canon.
Given our affections for the character and how little we saw of him during the Clone Wars, I'd be very, very excited if we got to go far enough back where maybe we get some Daniel Logan reprisals.
That would be awesome. He's super hip for the role. He's
absolutely.
He's all over social media and cosplay, and it looks great.
Yeah.
He looks
great.
I
saw some of his stuff in it. Yeah, it does. It looks really good.
Sharp as hell.
Wow, I think that's some pretty big Star Wars news. We were just talking if you're a Star Wars action figure collector, the Hasbro machine keeps pumping them out. We were just talking about how the Rogue One cast is getting reissued. Although this time we're going to get a 6-inch Black Series Bodhi Rook. So if you did not buy the Disney Store exclusive Elite Series Bodhi, you're going to get an opportunity to complete your Rogue One cast here pretty soon. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here for this week's episode of The Bad Batch. And you know what? I watched it. I've been through it a couple of times now. I poured over my notes last night, and by the time I was done, I realized that I don't have a whole lot to say on this one that's, speculative wise. I got a couple things that I want to hit on, but the episode pretty much speaks for itself this week. It's a good episode, don't get me wrong, but it just after the pacing and the excitement of last week's episode, it was kind of like a bit of a shift. Mind you, the whole middle act, I describe it like it's like a Friday the 13th movie.
Definitely a horror vibe.
That's what I got too. Yeah.
And such a dark repainting of everything that came before that I actually can't wait to get into that. There's some actually harrowing.
How many times have we said, if he goes off, it could be like your worst nightmare, and to some degree, that's what we got.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to get to all of that and more as we break this one down. It's called Battle Scars. This one debuted on Disney Plus on Friday, June 11th, 2021. Runtime this week, it's 24 minutes, 19 seconds without your credits, or a whopping 27:11 with. One thing about these streaming shows in general, particularly with the Disney ones, because they are throwing tons of money at it, and of course animation, there's lots of behind the scenes work that goes on. I am astounded at how long the credit sequences are. even if you take out and the Clone Wars and Bad Batch as well does foreign language credits after the English credits.
They certainly do. Yeah.
Even if you took those out, it's still an incredible amount of time spent on credits.
Yes.
But everybody in that sequence is deserving of their name there because they're turning out an amazing product. And this one's written by, go ahead.
None less so than D. Bradley Baker.
Yes. Did you just pick up on that for the first time this week?
D. Bradley.
I did. That was the first time I saw that. And
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool when you see it.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
As the Bad Batch.
As the Bad Batch.
Can you imagine though if they did it like a film, like a scrolling thing where you had to like credit every character?
Introducing D. Bradley Baker as Rex.
Yeah, really.
Fantastic. I just made me chuckle out loud because I'd never really noticed it before.
No. Yeah. This week's episode is written by Jennifer Corbett. That's our NCIS lady. Directed by Saul Ruiz again. And this week's synopsis reads, as they traverse a decommissioned medical facility, the Batch encounter an unexpected threat. I don't know about you guys. I read that and I'm like, oh, who are they going to run into? And then as it unfolded, I'm like, oh, now I know. This week's connective tissue, we've spent the last couple of weeks talking sort of just briefly about the connectivity of the episode. This one takes us forward right into Jedi Fallen Order. And we get a nod to a very famous scene from A New Hope, among a few other things. Once again, I don't know why this keeps happening to us. I guess it's just the level of detail that we're pouring over this. We're doing exactly what you want us to do, Disney. We talked last week in Decommissioned about, are there other facilities? And I think I had mentioned about the world that Cal Kestis was working on, and we couldn't remember the name of it.
That's right.
How ironic. Look where we are this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tip of the tongue.
Very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, let's get into it. This episode begins in media res with the Bad Batch being pursued by a trio of starfighters. And there they are.
Yeah. It kind of look like a modified, like the Phantom Attack shuttle from the I mean, there's certain differences, and it was super hard to grab a good screen cap.
As I would concur.
And I kind of thought as I was watching it live, they look something like between a classic A-Wing and a Jedi Starfighter, but they definitely have the boxy nose of that guy there, but without the sort of front guns.
Yeah.
So they do it. Yeah. So it's likely an amalgam of a lot of their animation assets.
I think so.
Jammed into one. I kind of, not flat, but I got a Viper, a Battlestar Galactica Viper, like a truncated Viper vibe.
Funny that you said that.
Wings swoop.
The angular wings also made me think Battlestar Galactica, but and I don't think you can see it very well in the shot that we put up here. those fighters, their wings are rounded. So I actually kind of went, it looks kind of like a Cylon Raider.
Yeah. I got a Battlestar Galactica vibe, certainly.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Which is
All
basically a Star Wars vibe.
Still in the employ of Sid, the Batch have stolen a lizard-like creature from another criminal element called the Rokai. I guess they could be pirates or something. I don't know. They've got starfighters, and interestingly enough, they have at least three starfighters of the exact same kind. So they've got money.
That's right. Painted in the same markings. They're organized.
Absolutely.
I immediately Googled Rokai to see what I could find, and I couldn't find
nothing.
anything. But I did find one weird thing.
What's that?
It's a Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order mod website, and it's one of the users' profile names is Rokai.
I wonder if that's just a nod.
Maybe
we are definitely deep in Fallen Order territory this week. So you know what? No surprise if that's the connection.
He's a modder from when the game first came out, like in 2018 or something. So he's been kicking around a while as a personality, I guess, on this mod chat channel or blog or whatever it is. That's the only reference I could find by typing Rokai Star Wars in, and it was like fifth one down, and it was,
it could be as simple as like, what's the reverse one there? The one from Tron Legacy where Tron's evil persona was named Rinsler after what JD Rinsler, who wrote on Star Wars, actually.
right.
Yeah, could be something that simple, but you know what? Cool to see that they're paying attention to what's going on in the bigger fan community. I think that's nice to touch into that.
Yeah.
As the and in true Star Wars fashion, the hyperdrive is broken.
I love it.
What is it with hero ships and hyperdrives? And the fact that it's in media res, and you have no idea what they went through to get this chameleon looking thing, but it's broken.
And I can't remember if it was episode 7 of The Mandalorian, but there was an episode in mid-season of The Mandalorian where we also started exactly the same. In space, in a chase, being shot at and trying to avoid combat.
Yeah,
exactly the same. So you can sort of tell that the writers have these rhyming stanzas and approaches to the storytelling. It's really nice and tight.
You talk about that, and we talked about when we do our intros and we introduce all of the, or not all of, but we introduce the major players, the writer, the director. And it's interesting now that as I spend more time watching the credits of each episode, I'm starting to see these names come up in different titles. So like in the animation department, in the art department. So all these people who have these strong backgrounds in other areas of production are still doing that, and they're getting their chance to shine as writers and directors. So I think like the way that they're keeping it in-house, it's pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. Especially because you see in animation a lot of outsourcing, and it's been happening since the 80s.
Oh yeah.
When I tried to, I went to, you guys know or probably know that I went to Sheridan for a while.
I remember that.
Yeah, for art, and dropped out second year because I was going to go make some money like we all think we can, and go back with all the noblest of intentions. And then when I had tried to go back, they had opened up submissions to the school to foreign countries, which is perfect. It just makes us a stronger, thing. But I was suddenly competing as like a 19-year-old kid who could draw pretty good with like 40-year-old Japanese animators that had been in the field 20 years.
Oh yeah.
And it was impossible to get back into school. Right.
Sure.
But I mean, the level of Canadian animation, we all have to admit, has skyrocketed. And I see a lot less outsourcing than we did in the 80s.
Well, I kind of, as a fan, I kind of wear it as a point of pride that, as Canadians, we have a direct animation connection to Star Wars with, albeit the holiday special, but still Ewoks and Droids after that, done by the same company, by Nelvana Studios. So,
Mark Maron.
Yeah.
Mark Maron.
That's where I kind of go, that's pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And it's a Canadian production. It's a Nelvana production when the heroes only have 3 fingers.
It's fantastic. And I actually rewatched it all on Disney, and it's pretty solid. And the Ewoks cartoon is far darker than I remember it ever being.
I've only gotten to the first couple of episodes, and then
it gets pretty dark.
I looked over at Kim, and she was like completely tuned out. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is one I should be watching on my own.
Yeah.
All right. As the ship is buffeted by blaster fire, Wrecker struggles with the lizard that Omega has affectionately named Ruby, while Echo works feverishly to repair the hyperdrive. Hunter returns fire, narrowly missing one of the fighters before the Havoc Marauder makes its escape, leaping into hyperspace. And just because it's the glory shot, oh man, you can't tell me that this isn't one of the best effects in Star Wars. I just love that stretch of the starscape as they make their way out.
It's, of all the sci-fi franchises and stuff, it's my favorite version of traveling at faster than light speeds.
Absolutely. There's some pretty good ones out there too. I mean,
there are. That's what I mean. That's a testament to
it. Wormholing, and
right, exactly.
Yeah, and you can't forget Spaceballs.
Going to Plaid.
Back at Sid's place, the Batch questions Sid about what the buyer wants with Ruby. And once again, she reminds them that it's a no questions asked kind of operation. There's Sid and Ruby in her cage in the background there with Omega.
She's really getting to flex the character too. She's, you know what I mean? She's been three episodes in a row now, so she's a recurring character ostensibly.
You know, I had said that after her first appearance, and I really praised Rhea Perlman's performance, which I still think is fantastic. And I may have gone so far as to say kind of a new favorite character, and she still is. But man, is she ever shown her colors this week?
Yeah. And we were right about. Yeah, exactly. And we were right about them sticking around and working for her because of very, very few other options.
Sid directs the Batch to bring the lizard to the back, but as they move off, a trio of drinkers in the corner catches Hunter's eye.
And she says a line too that's right out of The Mandalorian. I don't know what he's going to do with it. Maybe he's going to keep it as a pet. Maybe he's going to eat it. And there's a character that says that about Grogu in season 1.
Looking at this image of these three people, we can see the mysterious hooded figure sort of in the booth there.
Yes.
Another human and a Gotal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm having a look at this other guy, and as I'm looking at it here, I'm like, is that another clone?
Yeah.
You know, you can't help but kind of wonder that.
It's like the width of his shoulders, sort of.
Why are these three, comfortably drinking together? Like it doesn't make sense considering where the episode goes. So who knows? Maybe these two, maybe we'll see them again in a future episode. I'm not going to bank on it, but I'm not going to rule it out either.
Mm-hmm.
With the mission concluded, Wrecker and Omega ask Hunter if they can go off to exercise their new post-mission tradition.
Fantastic.
He tells them, don't be long. And the two of them gleefully tear off.
Mm-hmm. Sure, the kid. It's a great line.
There they are asking if they can go off. It's kind of cool that there's that stuff that, this off-camera stuff that happens. And again, just like what is it, the first or second episode where we talk about, just plain life on a starship, day-to-day kind of routine.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another glimpse into sort of their day-to-day. This is just what they do.
Yeah. And it's that brother-sister thing. These two are bonding sort of differently than the rest of the cast.
Oh, absolutely.
These guys are tighter, much tighter, which makes what's about to happen even more.
As the two head out, one of the mysterious drinkers watches them concealed by a hood and cloak. There's our hooded figure there, just a reflection, glint in the eyes, kind of peering out from under there.
Yeah, and they do a good job of obscuring it because that's a very familiar set of eyes. So they cut off the edges, they cut off the nose. It's still tough to figure out who it is.
Yeah, and then later on when we see him, and we'll get to that, I'm like, oh, I recognize that cloak.
Yeah.
Back in Sid's office, Sid hands Hunter some credits. But he questions her by mentioning, you said this job paid 3 times as much. Echo then questions, how is this a mutually beneficial arrangement? And Sid says, you're breathing, ain't you? And then goes on to say that they should be thankful considering the debt they owe her. And that's where I think everybody collectively went, huh? And I've seen this. In fact, I may or may not have used this tactic in the role-playing game. When Hunter questions the debt, she claims Sid tosses a data pad over with a litany of charges, which includes docking fees, port charges, gear, fuel, rations, and something called 20 cartons of Mantel Mix. Mantel Mix. And that's going to come up a little bit later, which is kind of funny. Meanwhile, at street level, Omega and Wrecker enjoy a carton of Mantel Mix.
And so there's a thing here. So the Pandoran in the scene, the Pandoran.
Yeah.
So there's a thing here that's going on. So this is she's already handed them a ledger for 20 boxes of this stuff.
That's right.
And this is the ostensibly 21st and 22nd box of this stuff.
Yep.
Meaning that they've gone on 11 missions.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we don't know about yet. So time has passed. Time is passing.
For sure it has.
Yeah. So it's cool. And we may get into that realm of like elusive amounts of time have passed. How do we know where we are? How close are we to Cal Kestis? How fast?
Yeah, we really don't know with any, definitive certainty. We've kind of speculated where we think we are, and
especially with Dave Filoni's statement mid Mandalorian season 2 that how do you know what timeline you're in? Where do you know? How do you know the events of this happened before the events of that? And that actually made my brain start to go, because he is the originator of the world between worlds, and that literally is the what if of the Star Wars universe.
The master architect has spoken, and now everything we think we know, maybe not.
And it's awesome, actually. It's awesome.
We did skip over a comedy beat, though.
In what part?
When they first bring the lizard in, and Sid looks at it and says, "That's an ugly looking lizard."
Funny that coming from her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Omega and Wrecker enjoying a carton of Mantel Mix, and I mean, if we're looking at it here, anybody get it's the Star Wars equivalent of like popcorn?
Yeah, Cracker Jacks.
So I'm like, Mantel Mix. Apparently, it's the Chicago mix of Star Wars.
Oh, it's so good. I'm addicted to that stuff. It's bad for my teeth, but man, they taste good together.
And in another comedic moment, when the vendor tells him that it'll be 14 credits, Wrecker instructs the vendor to put it on Sid's tab. Oh, that's funny.
It's great.
Back at the bar, the Ithorian and the Weequay gamblers that we saw in the last 2 episodes are still there, and they're now harassing the mysterious cloaked drinker in the corner. There they are, kind of giving him a hard time. When the Ithorian tells him, "You're in my seat," and orders him to move, the mysterious figure promptly ignores him. At the same time, in Sid's office, she goes on to tell the clones they'll need to pull off a big score to be square with her.
And there's something I didn't really notice before, but that Ithorian is dressed like classic action figure Hammerhead with the blue onesie.
Yeah. The only difference is he's wearing some kind of
translator.
I presume that's exactly what it is, some translator.
Right, and you can hear that original sound underneath his voice in these scenes, that kind of weird wood warping sound that they gave him, or the character, the race from A New Hope.
I was thinking if you were a fan of the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, you got a really good example of that with the Ithorian Jedi.
Hell yeah.
His vocal, the sonic weapon, I guess you could call it.
Mm-hmm. Good call.
In this scene, this is where Sid, again, she gets into that, the frenemy thing, and she kind of does that whole, listen, I like you boys, but goes into that how much of a job that they've got to pull off to be square with her. And this is where she really alludes to that whole thing that we talked about, where outliving their usefulness, their days are potentially numbered. So no sooner does she conclude her lecture. Oh, sorry. When they ask her what that job might look like, she actually says, like retrieving a tactical droid, but you bungled that up. And then she follows it up with, I suggest you figure something out before you see my ugly side.
Oh, wow.
bringing up the question of Sid as a frenemy again, and like I said, outliving their usefulness.
And maybe facilitating the need to go back after the tactical droid and see Rafa and
I kind of wondered if
thank you,
that's going to be a recurrent theme. Are we going to see those two characters again? Because there is kind of, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but towards the end of the episode, there's overt kind of suggestions of like, you know how to find us.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that too. It's almost, we'll talk about that when it happens. But yes, I noted that.
No sooner does Sid conclude her lecture, does the sound of blaster fire erupt from the bar. Both Sid and the clones rush out to see what's going on, and the Ithorian and Weequay Gambler are running out the door. All the while, the mysterious hooded figure stands at his seat, blaster in hand.
He must have put one over their shoulders or something like. Oh man, that's awesome.
Man, I know it's kind of dark here in the image that we're using, but when I was watching it at home on the larger screen, as soon as I saw the arm and I saw the blue stripe down the off-white plating, I'm like, yep, I know who that is. And that's exactly what I was saying about, like, oh, I recognize that cloak.
But it was a great visual when they all rush out of the office, because not only does the Bad Batch have all their weapons drawn, Sid's ready to go too.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
The figure then lays his weapon on the table, and as Sid shouts at him, "Who are you?" They turn to face the Batch, and pulling back the hood, we see that it is Captain Rex. All right, good for us. He was high on our list last week.
Yes. He was my gut pick, I believe.
We're fans here of Star Wars Theory, and we talked about that sort of offline throughout the week. That, you know, last week I think Bail Organa kind of was sitting kind of high for us as well.
Yeah,
and even Theory thought it was Bail Organa. So, interestingly enough, I guess the obvious one really was the obvious one. Still, though, we didn't get both characters, and I thought for sure if we were going to get one, we were going to get both.
Well,
but that may come up again at the end of the episode as well.
Something that's more of a holistic conversation towards the end, perhaps. But we got a lot of closure in this episode. We wrapped 2 storylines in this episode, and we aren't quite halfway through the season yet.
No, that's right.
So there's, we kind of wrapped up Act 1 now. So there's we know that if we keep the same sort of pacing and the timing that we have through the other Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau led shows, that we're about to amp up big time.
Middle act. So middle act, I mean, in the 3-act play. So this is where we, this is where things generally turn, and the threat level and the danger amps up for the characters, so that they
that can only mean one thing for me, which is Crosshair.
I think so. I would definitely say that he's been established as the central, maybe not the big bad, but the immediate bad.
Right.
And I mean, we also speculated that if they can get their chips out, that could spark the idea that they can get him back. And that may be the redemption arc of this series, is getting him back.
Right.
So Sid indignantly tells them that this isn't a clone clubhouse, and she's done taking in strays, and then she storms off back to her office. Rex and the Batch's reunion consists of sharing a drink at the bar, while Rex tells them what he's been up to since the end of the war. Echo reveals that Imperial files show that Rex was killed in action, and Rex says, well, that has its advantages. There they are, having their little reunion moment. When Echo asks Rex how he found them, he reveals that it was, in fact, through Trace and Rafa Martez. Rex asks about the kid that they're traveling with, and Hunter tells them that it's Omega, and she's a clone like us. Just then, the reunion is punctuated by a boisterous Wrecker and Omega who have returned from the street market. Wrecker embraces Rex in a bear hug, lifting him off the floor, while Omega says, I thought you didn't like the regs. But Wrecker laughs and says, we like this one. Did I get that? Oh, there we go. Kneeling down in front of Omega, Rex tells her that he's met many clones, but none like her. The two intently study each other for a moment, and Omega breaks the silence by telling him, "You're a Generation 1. Rex asks, "How do you know that?" And she tells him because of the lines on his face.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty perceptive for a kid who's physically, around 10 years old.
Does that put Rex at the Battle of Geonosis?
It does. If he's a Gen 1, yeah.
It sure does.
If he was first off the line. And Lord knows wherever else he's been.
I got to go back and watch for him in Attack of the Clones on one of the gunships.
Suddenly, the mood turns very serious as Wrecker grasps his head and asks Tech for a med patch. He tries to write it off as nothing more than a headache, and Echo mentions that the headaches have become more frequent. The tension in the room becomes palpable, with Rex becoming very guarded. Tech tries to alleviate his concerns by explaining that the deviant nature of Clone Force 99 has impeded the functionality of the inhibitor chips, except for Crosshair. And with the revelation that the Bad Batch have not yet removed their inhibitor chips, Rex flips the opening of his cloak back and grasps his sidearm. It's a super tense moment, and I kind of wondered where they were going to go with that. Like, I thought, are they going to draw down right here and this goes completely sideways?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Rex goes on to explain how dangerous the Batch are to everyone around them, going so far as to call them ticking time bombs. Funny, because I think I used the words powder keg last week.
That's correct.
That is what I said, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
He explains that he's seen firsthand what happens when the chip activates and that he doesn't want to bury any more of their brothers. Taking it all in, Hunter asks, "How do you suggest we get them out?" And Rex answers, "Good question. I'll be in touch." So yeah, that's kind of our first act of the episode there.
Yeah, heavy stuff, actually.
It's super, super heavy.
Yeah.
The reunion is kind of weird in that, I mean, you get that sort of like, oh, hey, we missed you, with the episode with Tup, but at the same time, this whole like trying to imagine things from Rex's perspective, right? Like, what's he been doing?
That's exactly it.
Besides rebuilding a droid, what's he been doing for the last weeks, months, however long it's been? And
right.
There's a line later on, a line that really piqued, probably the most interesting line in the entire episode. I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, but who else has he come into contact with since the end of the war?
Right.
I think that's an interesting question that we can explore. So we pick up with the Havoc Marauder ripping through hyperspace. Again, I just love the hyperspace effects in Star Wars. I don't know why. I just do. As the Havoc Marauder careens through hyperspace, the Batch discuss the plan to remove their inhibitor chips. Wrecker isn't exactly excited to have his head cut open. And we learn definitively that Omega does not, in fact, have an inhibitor chip. Although,
do we, though?
She says she doesn't.
Yeah,
I guess that's a matter of do you believe her?
I have a theory on that for later.
Well, so it's crossed my mind too. I personally don't think she has an inhibitor chip, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have some other form of programming. And I think it ties into what we said before about if the Emperor can build in a contingency for the Jedi, could the cloners not build in a contingency for themselves? And maybe she's it. Who knows? All right. So then we get back to a point where Tech is now basically working on completing his scanner. And cool. I never picked up from the first episode that it was a two-parter. So there he is working on the headset portion, which I remember seeing the handheld thing in the first episode. I thought, oh, it's just a handheld scanner.
That's right.
7 episodes in, Tech is finally finishing up his scanner. Having scanned Captain Rex, he's able to use the readings as a baseline to compare Rex's brain scan to their own, which should allow for the detection of any cellular anomaly. All right, dropping out of hyperspace, we arrive at their destination, and we see that it's the planet Braca.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go, right into Jedi Fallen Order. So Braca, it's a brand new planet. Well, brand new, 2019? made specifically for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So this is the first, I guess, cinematic appearance of the planet in canon, although the Fallen Order video game is canon. So here we go. Bracca is the location of a major ship-breaking yard, and as the Havoc Marauder moves toward the beacon set by Rex, we can see the planet's surface is littered with the bones of scrapped Republic and Confederacy starships. It's pretty awesome. Hank, did you play through Jedi Fallen Order?
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
That opening sequence. I love that opening sequence. I wanted to spend more time on that world. I was actually pretty disappointed that was just sort of the prologue.
And then
yeah.
Yeah. That's how I felt about the Shadows opener too. Just being, that a super exciting place to explore. And like you say, the idea that we just watched ostensibly millions of clones with millions of pieces of equipment fight millions of battle droids with millions of pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
And that there's just planets filled with scrap metal now.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. And to visit one, like to tie this all in, is very, very nice. I like to see that, especially with Fallen Order just got a PS5 and an Xbox. I can't remember what the new model's called.
Series X.
Just got a Series X free upgrades
Cool.
for the new models, and to stay relevant, I guess, because they're still planning sequels, and I hear rumbling of that all the time.
There's a lot of visual stuff going on in this image. If you're looking for it, you can see there's a few. I like the fact that just like in the game, and this is different than last week when we were on Corellia, where they were specifically just decommissioning Confederacy droids. Bracca, however, looks like it's a it's not a selective facility. It takes whatever it gets, because you can see there's a couple of them in here. There's a couple of Lucre Hulk battleships, Confederacy Lucre Hulks, or Trade Federation battleships if you prefer that name, as well as obviously a boatload of Venator class Star Destroyers. The Havoc Marauder comes to rest in the docking bay of one of the Venator class destroyers, settling in beside Rex's Y-Wing starfighter that we saw at the end of in Victory and Death. Still looking none the worse for wear. Still looks pretty clean. It's still got all the body panels on it, so it's not falling apart yet.
It's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering in that shot if you can actually see a droid in the cockpit.
No.
Because, it would make sense that he might lend R7 to the Braffa sisters, but that he would probably have it in the A-Wing with him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's kind of hard to jump to light speed.
The Y-Wing goes through, and I wish I had more pictures of this now that we're talking about it, because we could spend some time on this.
Mm-hmm.
The Y-Wing goes through quite a few modifications from Republic Y-Wing to Rebel Y-Wing.
That's right.
Because I'm just going to touch on this one. This single seat fighter, as opposed to the Rebel Y-Wing, which is the dual seat with the turret on top of the canopy. Mm-hmm. This has the separate gun turret, which is ostensibly the second seat, which basically eliminates the droid socket.
Oh, I see.
I don't think this model actually has a droid socket.
Okay.
Not until later on, anyway. All right. After a brief greeting, the clones don their helmets and head off, making their way across the wreckage. The wreckage across the world to a scrapped Star Destroyer. Wrecker points out that that's where he had his inhibitor chip removed. Was on a ship just like it. So let's pull that up here. There we go. So there's a lot of stuff that starts to come up for Rex here, where he's starting to revisit some of the memories maybe from his experiences over the last few hours of the war.
Yeah.
All right. Wrecker asks, do we need to go all the way over there? And if we do, why didn't we land closer? And Rex points out that the planet is controlled by the Scrapper Guild, and they need to avoid their patrols. Of course, we get our first look at the Scrapper Guild on their little skiff.
Yes.
It's the same Scrapper Guild that Cal Kestis is later going to end up working for while trying to conceal his identity as a Jedi Padawan in Fallen Order. And there's a shot of Cal. I think he's going to work on that one or coming home from work, but that's right in the beginning. So yeah, Cameron Monaghan, Cal Kestis, awesome character, even if you don't like the actor. I'm looking at you, Hank.
Oh no, it's great. It's a great game. Fantastic. I do want to see. I'd love to see him play this live action. Like,
me too.
Because he's played characters that I don't like doesn't mean he's not a talented actor. Because you'd have to move me for me not to like you.
Yeah. As they make their way towards the Star Destroyer, the clones make small talk.
Yes.
Rex telling them that Fives tried to warn him about the inhibitor chips.
Fives.
When he asks how the batch learned of their own chips, he's surprised to learn that it was through Omega. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about Fives.
We're just going back so that we can just keep everybody up to speed. Fives is the character that kicked Order 66 into the open and almost accidentally ruined the entire plan for the Empire.
Yeah.
And what we saw with Fives was him struggling to maintain control, and we saw him breaking. It was like that the order had leaked a little into his system, and we didn't understand the mechanism of what was happening, if it was just some sort of like computer code that was changing his, it raised all these questions. And then we saw Rex ostensibly rescue him, and then we saw Rex know that something was wrong with him, and literally that ticking time bomb or powder keg. Rex suddenly starts to view from that moment on every other clone like a ticking time bomb, and he doesn't know necessarily like, who do I trust now, even though I still have to on the surface do my job and trust everybody here. It's Fives is integral to the sort of the genesis of what's happening in these storylines now, and we're getting sort of that resolution, actually. We're probably not going to see other clones get their chips removed. We might hit on Gregor and Wolf, maybe.
Those two came to mind, considering the relationships that we see later on in Rebels.
And then in terms of what Fives went through, in terms of what we saw Rex go through, in terms of what we're about to watch Wrecker go through.
Yeah.
And when we hit that point, I'd like to make another point about this, actually.
Of course.
I'm going to pause it there, and let's get to that scene.
All right. So just as they're moving along here, I got to find my image here. There we go. Whoops. There we go. Crossing over a makeshift bridge, Hunter spots the otherwise still water below begins to roll. Something unseen is below the surface, and he warns the rest of them to stay above the waterline. As the clones make their way inside the dead Star Destroyer, the music becomes more ominous, and there is a distinct tonal shift that I found to be reminiscent of a classic horror movie. Rex recounts his last time aboard a Star Destroyer and how it didn't end well for him. Echo says, if the inhibitor chip is something you can't control, how did you get yours out? And Rex just replies, I had help.
He covers for Ahsoka here. He's still, like what I just said, he can't trust them. He's still hands on his gun, metaphorically.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's waiting for these guys to go off any second.
It's like we said last week when we were, debating who it could be, and on the subject of Ahsoka, the same thing applies to Rex. He doesn't know if they're if they're Jedi killers. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't know if they're been affected by. Yeah.
That's right.
Although there is a moment. I don't know if it's here. It's later on. Hunter and Rex talking about on Kala.
Yeah,
how they couldn't save the general, but they saved the Padawan.
Nice. You could maybe see Rex running around the galaxy, waking clones up one at a time and building a new army, some sort of weird post Star Wars what if. That'd be kind of cool.
Morpheus of this world.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Boop, 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 boop.
That water seed, though, that did it for me.
Why?
Moment. Just when you see, because like the amount of garbage.
I know. In there, you can't help but, yeah. He says he had help. And then he pulls up short, having stumbled onto the edge of a deep chasm. Rex points out that the medical bay is on the other side, and with no other way to get around, he motions to Wrecker to grab a length of cable that just happens to be laying nearby. One by one, using the cable like a rope crossing, they make their way across the chasm until only Wrecker is left. And at the thought of having to cross the deep chasm below, Wrecker shouts, "It's okay. Head doesn't hurt anymore. You can go on without me."
There's that again.
But little sister Omega encourages him, saying that it's okay. Just keep your eyes on the cable. And once again, shaking off the fear, Wrecker meanders out onto the cable. It's kind of it's kind of again, it's played for comedy. He's so much more heavier than the rest of them, and the cable is the big sag, and then sags again, and then he nearly falls off the thing before he just completely wraps himself around it. Like, I don't want to go. All right. When suddenly the cable does snap and Wrecker falls, but luckily the cable wraps itself around his leg, preventing him from falling into the dark water below. From the opposite side of the chasm, the rest of the batch look on as Wrecker dangles upside down. When the water begins to churn, the clones tell Wrecker to climb fast. But before he can act, a tentacle lashes out of the water and pulls him under. Wrecker surfaces briefly, using his vibro knife to sever the tentacle. But it's not enough, as more tentacles reach out, pulling him back under the water. All right. So there's a good shot there of him getting pulled under just before he cuts it off. The scene's pretty evocative. I mean, there's no question that we're going for the trash compactor in A New Hope here.
Hell yeah, even the palette.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a classic Star Wars creature. If you guys aren't aware, I mean, by now it's called the Dianoga, and it's pretty cool. The one that we saw back in A New Hope was considerably smaller than this one.
Yeah, especially if you had the original 1978 Death Star with the
toy
little green action figure that was crazy mouth, big eye on a ball on an arm kind of thing from the head.
They actually can grow to become quite large. I don't remember the numbers, but it was like several meters long.
Right.
But here's a look at what they look like. So I mean, there's the big eye stalk on the top, right? And that's all we saw. We saw one tentacle and the eye stalk in A New Hope.
Right.
We're going to see a little bit more of it in this episode, but quite large. Although depicted purely as beasts, Dianogas have actually been canonized to be sentient and have a basic tribal culture. They're totally dependent on water, which without they would dry up and die. I read something to the effect of the one that's on the good Lord, Vader's Star Destroyer.
Okay. The Executor.
That's the Super Star Destroyer. I think it's the Devastator. Is his
right.
Devastator?
Yes.
My God, how can I call myself an expert? All right. I'm by no means an expert. I'm just a fan like everybody else. Yeah, there was something about the Dianoga there being, whether it was accidentally picked up or they discovered it on board the ship and they just tossed it in. I'm a little confused here because it actually read like, how sometimes you throw enzymes into your composter to help the process along. I kind of got the impression that's what they did. Oh, Dianoga, just throw it in the trash and it'll take care of any organic matter that happens to fall in there, so it doesn't stink up the place, right?
Well, when the trash compacts, they do say it left. So it had like a
you hear that
from that.
You hear the clanking of the, which I just assume was let's open a gate and let the thing out.
Yeah.
So maybe it was purposely in there. Wrecker and the Dianoga struggle under the water until he's finally able to surface and begins to climb the cable. But the Dianoga, not yet ready to give up its meal, heaves itself up from below, tentacles flailing and its toothy maw agape. There we go.
Nice.
But Hunter blasts it from above, and the rest of the clones are able to pull him up. Rats scurry about the ship as the clones continue their way to the medical bay. And when they finally...
Womp rats?
I don't think they're womp rats. You know, it's not impossible. They could be related to womp rats. They look kind of big. But again, I mean, we've seen various rat-like creatures in Star Wars of varying sizes, and with it being so dark this week, I couldn't tell for sure. So I'm just going to go with the generic rat.
I had a thing with a bird that I thought might be one of the steel peckers from Jakku. I'm probably grasping at straws, but if there's rusty metal to pack, it could be that.
Why not?
Yeah.
When they finally arrive, Tech remarks that he wouldn't consider it a sterile environment anymore. To which Rex retorts, "Would you prefer the medical bay on Camino?" And Tech blurts out, "This will do nicely."
That's awesome, actually. Yeah.
He's still my favorite character. You know, every time he has I don't even know what to call it, a tech-ism. Every line that guy says in his blunt obviousness is just, I don't know, it's comedic gold to me. I love it. The batch set to work preparing the facility. Echo uses his scomp link to activate the surgical pod while Tech prepares his own equipment. Tech then places the headset over Wrecker's head and begins the scan. Wrecker grimaces in pain while Omega looks on with concern. So we get a good shot of the scanner here as they're looking at taking the scan of Wrecker's brain.
Right.
Presumably, the red dot is sort of pinpointing where they think it is. Not sure how that relates to where the medical computer spotted it in Rex's head. I don't think it's in the same location, to be honest.
It looks very similar to his scar location in this episode.
It does.
Yeah.
Omega warns Hunter that she thinks that the surgery is dangerous, but Rex tells her it's more dangerous not to do it. She's worried that if something goes wrong, that she'd be left all alone. But Hunter reassures her that she's with them for the long run.
Is she seeing the future again?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. It's just little dips into that in every episode where she seems to have some sort of level of precog. Maybe not understanding the vision, but definitely going, if we do this to Wrecker, something bad is about to happen.
Yeah.
And she did the exact same thing with Crosshair.
Right. Meanwhile, as the scan continues, we hear the tone that it emits becoming higher pitched. Tech thinks he's found something, but Wrecker struggles against his inhibitor chip and tears the headset off. So I have some questions. I don't know if they're... Oh, I'm getting too ahead of myself here. There he is. He's really struggling at this point. And you see how he goes through this episode where, again, you hear that the higher pitched tone, the light and the tone emitted from the surgical pod. Like, do you think that the scanner in some way was the final
push it over the
trigger?
Edge. Yep.
Because I don't think the sound alone did it. I think the sound is a cue for us as the viewer to know that it's affecting him somehow.
I don't think that was the final push. I actually think that the final push was that in conjunction with the conversation that was happening in the background and Hunter actually admitting that they let the Padawan go.
Yeah.
And I think those things together were actually the breaking point. And I don't think he may have lasted a little longer without the confession. And the confession is they cut right from the confession to his eye turning.
Yeah.
It's a close up on his eye, and I don't know how they do it in animation, but his eyes change.
Yeah.
And he only has one.
I know.
It's right after that. It's because they're holding on him and they're cutting kind of back and forth to the conversation, and they're holding on him when he says, "We let the Padawan live." And that's right.
Oh yeah, that's the line about we couldn't save the general, but we could save the Padawan. Yeah.
Right. And that's the moment he turns.
So knowing they need to work fast, Echo activates the surgical pod while Rex tells Hunter that they were lucky. Not many clones were immune to the inhibitor chip effect, adding that it's rare. So this for me was the most interesting line in the entire episode, because now we've opened up a whole new opportunity of storytelling where we can actually go out and explore what some of the other clones, how did they escape Order 66, or how did they survive the war? And particularly, like we've already mentioned, I think it'd be cool to explore sort of the Wolf Gregor connection, because if you take a look at their bios, it's heavily implied that Wolf carried out Order 66 and didn't get his chip removed until later.
That's right. That's right.
And Gregor being a Republic commando, I just, I feel like there's a big hole there where he's presumed dead at the end of his episode in Clone Wars and then just miraculously turns up. Oh, you made it in Rebels. So I think there's connective tissue there that we'll probably see at some point.
And I think he's probably talking about his buddy that on the planet with the Twi'lek kids.
With Tup.
With Tup. I think he's probably referencing that as the rare moment that he's actually seen. Because we'd
already theorized that Tup being, apart from the war, was never subjected to it. Again, that's
probably true.
It brings up
like a direct communication.
Yeah, like did they get it by radio? Was it like just flip a switch and then all the chips activated? Like there's still this like uncertainty with how the order was disseminated.
Yeah,
and I'd say that uncertainty is still there even now.
Yeah, because it's not like in iRobot where the big brain just flips a switch and they all of a sudden turn red to indicate they're switched.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's sort of telling the last line, and maybe they mean that there's some physical way of them reaching each other, but the way he says, you know how to reach me, is almost like, is there something about clones and the way that they're connected we don't know?
I don't know. In the way that maybe like twins, twins sort of, have those.
Right. Yeah. Yes. That's sort of the vibe I got from the last line of the episode.
Sure. Seeing Wrecker struggle, Tech tries to administer a sedative. At least I think it's a sedative, but it's too late. Wrecker grabs Tech by the arm with one hand and by the throat with the other. And we get tossing Tech like a rag doll. Wrecker exclaims, "You're all in violation of Order 66." And he dons his helmet and picks up his rifle. Rex tries to stun him, but Wrecker slaps the pistol out of his hand like it was nothing and begins to indiscriminately spray the room with blaster fire. Hunter grabs Omega and dives for cover, as do the rest of the batch. Hunter then tells Omega to stay with Tech while he and the rest of the team try to draw Wrecker out of the medical bay. From a concealed position, Rex attempts to stun Wrecker and misses. Whoops. But it's enough of an opportunity for Hunter, who, from behind Wrecker, throws his vibro knife, knocking the rifle from his hand. At the same time, oh man, and this is where I had a hard time, because this is the big action sequence of the show, and much like last week, it's the cuts are even quicker because the multiple opponent thing that's going on here. So you get these quick cuts. And I got to tell you, trying to grab some of these screenshots was really, really hard. All right. At the same time, Echo tries to hit Wrecker with a large canister. Where do we got it here? Here we go. But the attack is blocked, and Wrecker tosses Echo into Rex's incoming stun bolt. Poor Echo takes it right in the face. Hunter then picks up the canister and lunges at Wrecker, striking him repeatedly with it, eventually knocking off his helmet. With his helmet now off, Hunter leaps onto Wrecker's back and tries to subdue him with a chokehold. But Wrecker shakes him off easily and pins him into the wall by the throat as he informs Hunter all clones in violation of Order 66 shall be terminated. But before he can choke the life out of Hunter, a blaster bolt strikes the wall in front of them, and Wrecker turns to see a terrified Omega holding his blaster rifle. The look on her face this week, the emotion that's conveyed, it's pretty powerful. And again, like you say, I don't know how they do it in animation, but they are conveying it very effectively.
Oh yeah, it's beautifully done.
The entire next sequence is something out of a Friday the 13th movie with Wrecker in the role of Jason Voorhees and Omega as one of the Crystal Lake campers. Wrecker is unrelenting in his pursuit of her, while Omega is wholly terrified and flees for her life, and I firmly believe that. Crawling under a partially open door, Omega finds herself at a dead end, and she frantically looks for another way out. Wrecker heaves the door open with brute force and moves in for the kill. Surveying the room with keen eyes, Wrecker spots a cupboard just big enough for Omega to hide in, and striding up to it, he tears the door off, only to find a rat scuttles out. This whole scene, this is my Jurassic Park moment, where I thought this is the kitchen scene in Jurassic Park where the kids are trying to evade the Velociraptor. And that whole thing, although they set it up, more like casting the reflection into the stainless steel, it's the same vibe with the cutting back and forth to Omega, who she winces when he tears the door off, but it's the wrong place.
Yeah, it's the classic around the corner and the guy's not there, he's behind you.
I thought it was really well done.
Perfect.
There's few places left for her to hide in this room, and it's only a matter of time before he finds her. And just as the rat from the cupboard runs past her, she pokes her head out from under the metal that she's been hiding under to look for Wrecker, and promptly gives away her position. Wrecker tosses the piece of metal aside while Omega scrambles on all fours, pleading with him, "This isn't you, Wrecker. It's the inhibitor chip." As Wrecker towers over her, Omega, still clutching his rifle, pleads with him to stop, saying, "I don't want to hurt you," as she slowly begins to squeeze the trigger. She just looks like she's really hurting in this scene. Like this could have gone one of two ways. And I have a theory on this too. Like, we've talked about like trauma in this show before, particularly with Echo and what he went through. Again, here's a moment that I think is going to come back to haunt one, if not both of them later on.
Mm-hmm.
That there's going to be this moment of like trying to rebuild, the relationship because of that, even though it's not his fault.
So I was wrong in my prediction for that moment, because I figured her voice would be enough to
pull him out
stop,
of it.
But
you
it
think
wasn't.
So, eh? Yeah, I didn't think that. I honestly did not think that there was any stopping him. I figured it was just a matter of time before he was going to go off. And I actually thought that we talked about the stakes of what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the results were going to be a lot more. I thought the casualties were going to be higher.
Right.
We didn't get any in this, really.
No, we might have lost a member or something.
That's what I mean. Like the
actually only expendable member would be really Echo too. Like,
I actually thought the potential for someone to die in this episode was very, very high,
or at least get injured.
Yeah, like seriously injured, not like I got stunned and I'll shake it off. All right. Just before Wrecker can carry out his execution, a wounded Rex, leaning heavily on the doorway, saves Omega by stunning him into unconsciousness. So, just as I said, I mean, there he is. He's obviously pulled himself out from underneath Echo's limp, stunned body.
Mm-hmm.
Still rattled by it, but is able to save her. Back in the medical bay, Tech performs the procedure to remove Wrecker's inhibitor chip. Now, we've seen this before because back in season 7 of the Clone Wars, back in the second last episode, back in Shattered, we saw Rex back in the medical bay. Oh, sorry, that's not the right image. That's the right. Nope, that's not the right image either. Oh my Lord, where'd I put it? Here it is.
There it is.
So here it is back in season 7. We've got Rex in the surgical pod, or going into the surgical pod, while Ahsoka, R7, and the FX medical droid kind of
ostensibly Tech in this scene is the FX7 droid.
Yeah, pretty much. This played out a whole lot different. When they finally do go through the procedure, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but Rex makes a comment about this could take a while. Well, going back to get this image and rewatching this sequence, do you realize how fast it was that Rex went from procedure to recovered?
Right.
Like
right.
super, super fast.
Yeah, very quick. Well, it's because of all the pace of the story beats happening around it.
Absolutely.
You had to show it, but you kind of got to squeeze it in there. So
when you contrast that against the time it takes in this episode, where there's this sense of they wait for a long time because they're all like, Omega's practically sleeping, and the rest of them are just kind of like milling around like, okay, watching the paint dry. All right, so getting back to where we are in our episode, there we go. We finally get Wrecker stuffed into the surgical pod, and everybody's kind of watching. Tech is doing his tech thing, and hopefully everything goes off the way we want it to. When the procedure is completed, they slide him out of the surgical pod and they wait for Wrecker to come around. Rex warns them that it could take a while and suggests that Hunter takes Omega outside for some air, but she refuses, insisting to stay with her brother until he wakes up. We get a wipe shot to Captain Rex standing in the doorway of the medical bay. He's holding his helmet in his hands and he's staring at it intently. And I don't know if you picked up on this, but the musical cue in this moment, it kind of harkens back to Victory and Death.
Yes.
And it's pretty easy to imagine, he's lamenting sort of on, how did he get here? What led to this? I can imagine him sort of, having some somber thoughts about when he said, like, I don't want to bury any more of my brothers. And I think that's exactly what he's thinking about, staring at that helmet.
I had some curious thoughts about why he would continue to wear the armor. I know that the clone armor is sort of more than just standard military gear to the clone. But just the connection to the past, the war, the high level target visually that it would make him.
Yeah.
It seems like maybe the only reason that he's still got the armor so that he'll still have it to kit bash for rebels, so that he'll remain recognizable as a character when they bring him back in the past from, you know what I mean? But I can't see the character of Rex going, this is practical.
We've talked about armor, and I've joked about, plot armor. But I'm not going to make that joke again because I don't think that's what's going on here. But uniforms as a suit of armor. Uniforms are emboldening. And, for somebody who's, like the rest of the Bad Batch themselves have had their entire world flipped upside down, the armor probably gives him some sense of normalcy. It's constant. It doesn't change.
Right.
So even though, the clones turned, he didn't. And maybe that's just sort of his way of sticking to his principles. And it's just, again, it's a armor for the soul, maybe. I don't know.
No, in terms of that makes sense. It's a comfort level. It's also, whatever kind of uniform you do put on, it does change. If you allow it to, it can change the way you interact with the world. And at work I put on a tool belt and I become this, but that's your uniform now. Right, exactly. And so in terms of that, maybe it's that moment brought it to my focus because he was staring into the helmet like questioning. Maybe that was the moment when he thought, okay, I'm going to commit to the uniform.
Well, there is definitely a major moment of reflection there, and I think that's what makes this moment really interesting, is that we all have our own interpretation of what it is, and it could be all of it or none of it. Like, it just, but we as the viewer get to impose what we think in that moment. And I think that's what makes, moments like these, not just in the Clone Wars, but in other media, I think that's what makes these moments really good.
Yes. Agreed.
And to point out, last week you had said, Hank, that maybe the clone or the Bad Batch had been, polishing up their armor a little bit.
Right.
In contrast, Rex has gone a little bit more gray. He's a lot more scuffed.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
Could this all be like with The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker, everything leaning towards a gray Jedi?
Right.
Maybe we're getting to a gray clone trooper where that's your righteous level.
That's entirely entirely possible. Yeah.
I mean, you could see them adopting like the original, definitely some sort of loose morality to just to live in the galaxy. Now you're on the run.
Yeah. All right. So what do we get here next? We get this moment where Omega has said that she's not leaving, and I just love this scene in the sense that it's classic. We've seen it in every TV show, every movie where one of the main protagonists is laid up in the hospital bed, and the family member, the loved one, diligently, dutifully at the bedside. And just look at her, how she's sort of, physically in contact with him. Nobody else is, mind you, just her.
No, that's right.
Speaks volumes to that relationship that they're developing.
And you can see Tech in the foreground there sleeping because of how, he's just, that's his, it makes sense now to rest.
So practical. Nothing's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think when I was in the military, we used the expression, when in doubt, rack out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of where he's at with that. I'm just going to wait. All right. So slowly, we actually see Wrecker's armored hand begins to reach across, and then he actually pats Omega on the head, which I thought was a really nice touch to him, kind of coming around that, immediately he acknowledges that to her that he's okay. The procedure was a success, and as Wrecker sits up from the surgical pod, the clones share a happy moment, glad to have their brother back. Then, one by one, the rest of them undergo the procedure. And it's really kind of, it's matter of fact after that point. Like there's no drama, there's no tension. It's just like, oh, it worked. Now everybody gets it done. Finally, when it's all over and the clones are packing up to leave, a remorseful Wrecker tries to explain to Omega that he couldn't stop himself. And even though she accepts his explanation, he still tells her he's sorry.
So this is the moment.
Yeah.
That makes what happened in Order 66 so incredibly dark. We now know definitively that every single clone that this happened to was aware
and unremorseful,
but could not stop themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
He was trapped in his own consciousness, knowing what he was doing was wrong.
Yep.
And so were the clones that killed the Jedi and killed each other. And that's the tragedy here, is that the personalities that we know and love of these clones were trapped inside this programming, watching themselves kill their commanders and friends. Yeah. And that's just crazy, dude. Like, we have that confirmed now. That was what I was getting at with Fives, was watching him struggle through it and go crazy and realizing that he was trapped in there the whole time. That Rex, maybe something about the first gen, or maybe something about Rex's personality, but he fought harder than any of them because he was able to control it until the surgery.
Right up until,
And so it just makes it so tragic that every single one of those million clones, while they're like, yay, Empire, in line, cheering the Empire, are trapped inside their own consciousness.
You think on some level that some of them are, while they're overtly cheering, they're, internalizing, what the hell am I doing?
Right. And and so tragic to be trapped inside your own nightmare for the rest of your existence.
I think that's where we talked about this before, and that really brings up an interesting point about if they decide to go after Crosshair. And we talked about this before, that, some of them probably went along with it willfully because, and it boils right down to that line, good soldiers follow orders.
Right.
So if you believe you're a good soldier and that blindly following orders, no matter what they are, is the right thing to do. This is where I say, like, even if they go after Crosshair, there's a part of me that thinks that he's not coming back. Even if they take it out, I think that he is one of those people.
They have to kill him.
Otherwise, he's drank the Kool-Aid. He is part of the New Order.
And we've never seen them do the opposite to the chip. That so I guess the opposite of removing the chip is to make it more intense. And we know that they've been trying to make him more aggressive and trying to make him more tense. This scene also answers the question, is it a constant, is it a one-time signal?
Yeah.
And so now I'm in the one-time signal camp, and once the order is given, it affects the chip. You can choose to fund it or not, and maybe not choose. But so then it explains why Tup didn't get the signal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, and even if he got the signal now, I don't know that it would work because it was the one-time signal.
You would need specific conditions to act on it. Like you'd need a Jedi
or a traitorous clone.
Yeah.
Or a traitorous clone, right? And so that's another point about the average soldier being trapped in their own consciousness. Just reflexively obeying horrific orders. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Not every clone killed Jedi. We had nearly 1 billion clones and maybe 5,000 Jedi at the end of the Clone War.
The clone to Jedi ratio was not that big.
So you have ostensibly a small population of clones that committed the atrocities, and the rest just responding reflexively to the new authority, trapped in their own, questioning what they're doing, but not able to do anything about it. That's what that Wrecker scene's about. That
90% or more of the clones just carried out their orders and continued to fight war against droids.
Right. But even they might still even be going, what am I doing? I can't stop myself on some part of their personality trapped in that coma. Because we know that Order 66 actually resets part of your programming.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Tragic. Every single clone is my hero and a martyr now.
Yeah, I think on some level that answers another question that we had about them all getting it. And I think that there is an element of, there's still a command structure. So like we say, only a small percentage of clones actually faced off against Jedi. And even if they did all get invisible brain signal, it's not like the guys on the front line could disengage from the assault or the defensive position they were in to turn and go hunt the Jedi.
You didn't stop shooting at droids. You had to shoot at both now.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe there was an element of radio communication from higher.
But that does explain the scene in the very first episode of the Bad Batch where, the majority of the clones were in there, cheering on the speech.
Yeah.
And there was a little select group who were like,
that's true.
Pocket of guys that were like, oh no, looking around.
They weren't doing the rah-rah.
Yeah.
So different levels, and therefore Rex's statement that people that can resist the chip are rare.
That's right.
And oh man, it makes it so sad.
It does.
So sad.
So I hope on some level, and even if it is just Wolf and Gregor, and I actually think that's probably where it's going to go, I would like to get, a little bit more backstory on their, how they weathered the end of the war. I'd like to know how that happens, because we know the three of them are going to end up living together, and that's where we pick them up early on in Rebels. Something tragic and amazing would be a story where if Rex ever met Cody and Cody is turned, could be beautiful and tragic. There's this whole idea and violent. Seriously meeting each other, like where Cody's now clad in full, stormtrooper armor, right? Man, let's write it.
Somebody did write a meme about that, though.
I think so, yeah.
Or it wasn't with Rex, though. It was with Obi-Wan.
Was it?
He meets him up.
Oh, that's right. I did see that.
Hey, I missed you. And he's like, well, I missed you too. And he's like, no, I missed you.
Yeah. That was, they put it over the image when Luke and Obi-Wan were driving into Mos Eisley and they get stopped.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The shoulder pauldron.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So Wrecker wakes up. He pats her on the head. He tells her he's sorry, and Omega smiles at him craftily, and she draws out a handful of Mantel mix from a pocket. She tells him that the mission is over and they can't break tradition. And how sweet is that? Man. Enough to break the tension. Like, I thought he was going to cry. I think that's the moment of actual forgiveness. Yeah. So I had a similar thought about that, even though it's a reconciliation thing. And even if it's really, really small, it's just enough to get the message across to him that they will be okay. Mm-hmm. But I'm still not sure that each of them individually will be okay for what happened. And that's where I say, this could come back to haunt them later on.
I think it's going to haunt Wrecker more than anything.
I do that. Like, and I said this too, like guilt is, it can be a really heavy burden to bear, and it can weigh heavily on anybody. And, you know, man, I mean, speaking from my own experiences, and, you know, like people, we have a tendency to like beat ourselves up, you know. Can you imagine what he's doing to himself right now?
This is it. Can you imagine what's going on in the background of every single clone too? Constantly, part of them just beating themselves up about.
Yeah.
And that's the cycle of sort of depression and mental illness too.
Yeah.
Is that beat yourself up about beating yourself up.
That's right.
About beating yourself up.
It's such a negative feedback loop, and you don't know how to get out of it.
That's right.
All right. Outside the Star Destroyer in the night air, Rex finishes a transmission with an unseen person as Hunter approaches. It's a cool little scene where he's talking on his comlink, and he says something about, "I'll meet you at the rendezvous before the end of the next cycle."
So to me, that's not Rafa or Trace. To me, that's
so?
No. To me, that's Ahsoka or better.
Yeah.
Meeting at the rendezvous. Yeah. And I think I've been hearing rumors, and I don't know where they originated, and if they're Mike Zero rumors, we'll ignore them. But if they're maybe something more a little credible, I've heard Bo-Katan rumors in the Bad Batch, and I so
be surprised if she turns up in this.
These are legacy characters in the Filoni-verse, if you will, and I just bought the figure, so they got to make it worth my money. But it's a natural progression from these characters, and to see a link from Rex to Bo-Katan, and from Bo-Katan to Boba Fett, and you know, like, to have these connected tissues. And I had a thought, another maybe fan fiction idea, that one day Omega, as an adult female trying to wear armor and be a badass, you know, like Captain Phasma level female badass, could take the name. And wouldn't it sound amazing, guys? You heard it here first. Omega Fett.
Oh, it's very interesting. You know what? I think it's cool, the idea that, you know, she's young enough that she could be. If the long game is to evolve this character into Phasma, on a fundamental level, I'm going to be upset just because of how Phasma goes out.
Yes, but I just meant as an example of a badass, like the potential of a badass female character, like the Brienne of Tarth, that really strong female. And then the idea that rogue clones could take the Fett name is so cool. And when I had said in my head, I went, Omega Fett, wow, that sounds amazing. Actually, that phrase sounds amazing. And they're all Fetts, right? Rex Fett, right. Fives Fett.
They're all Fetts. There's a fan fiction in there.
Yeah, there's more Fetts than there are Mandalorians ostensibly at this point.
That's true, yeah.
More fake Mandalorians than real Mandalorians.
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Dave Filoni, listen to what we're saying.
Well, what if he's already beat you to the punch? And
it's quite possible.
It's man, would I love to have a seat in the writer's room right now. All right,
because they're actively working on all those other projects, and all these things are going to weave together. Like, we are going to get extensions of this Bad Batch stuff in the Ahsoka show, and we're going to get extensions of it in the future movies. And I'm crazy excited.
The fact that they are building this MCU style universe that's arguably more cohesive than it's ever been before. You know, initially when the old EU was scrapped, I was a little upset about that because I thought there's some high quality stuff. But as has been, you know, proven before, Filoni and crew are mining the old EU for some of the best elements and recanonizing them in new and interesting ways that, while still familiar, are just as exciting.
Right, and it lets us own those ideas and characters and objects and ships and things, but it repurposes them for a use in the new world, and really it gives them a new paint job for us, because we've read all those old stories and they were cool, and they were always, you know, you could pick and choose. Like, I didn't like the way Luke did this in that novel, and the courtship of Princess Leia was kind of boring, but you know, so we always cherry picked what we wanted anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it's I mean, it was always going to be a treasure trove of things that could be could be used, and they're so good at it.
So the two men share a moment of reflection on the death of the Republic and what their future might hold. Rex says that he spent his entire life fighting for the Republic, and there's no reason for him to stop now. Hunter retorts that the Republic is gone, but Rex says, not all of it. There are other people out there just like them. Hunter, not willing to commit to Rex's fight, says that he has to do what's right for Omega and for his squad. And when Rex asks him what that is, he answers, I'm still trying to figure that out. Rex understandably says, when you figure things out, let me know where you land. The two clones share the warrior's embrace as they clasp each other's forearm. And as Captain Rex steps off into the foggy night, Hunter tells him, if you're ever in a bind, you know how to reach us.
And maybe it means like you have my phone number, but it also means like, could clones track Rex somehow? Is there an inherent chain code that?
I actually thought it was more of that. We talked about intermediaries last week, about acting through intermediaries.
Right.
Yeah. I think now that they both have the Martez sisters as a common connection, that it wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination, because they've already told, or Omega has already put out the invitation for them, come visit us on Ord Mantell. So for me, the link is we can just dial up the Martez sisters as the intermediary, and they can contact you sort of on our behalf.
That's true. And the way Rex leaves this scene, this might be the last time we see Rex until we see him in Rebels, because he disappears into the fog. Just like, wow. Actually, wow.
Super powerful. And then of course, in my own like teenage, like I had this, this image of like, as soon as he steps out of sight, they're like, whoop, bang, as he falls. Because he can't see a damn thing.
Trips over Gregor, who's been there the whole time.
He's been lying there waiting. Oh, Jesus. All right. So, unfortunately for both men, a Scrapper Guild patrol has been observing them the whole time, and they actually are about to inform the Empire. There's our close-up of our guild friends. Which brings up an interesting question about how, what's the connection here? Because the guilds, the mining guild, as it were.
Do those helmets not look a lot?
You know what? You bring that up, and I see it. I do see the connection.
I don't know what it could be, but they do look very strikingly similar.
Sure do. They do. How much autonomy do the guilds have, at this point? We've got the Scrapper Guild who says contact the Empire. Like, they're not a part of it. So
we have a mining guild.
I presume that they're just not.
We have a bounty hunting guild.
Yeah.
We're starting to see a grander structure to the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
Like that there's some, these things may transcend Republic, Empire.
Right.
Who's in charge, separatists, there's this underlying functioning uber society in the galaxy where you have, the banking guild and so there are all these factions that are in play that we've just never been privy to, or that they've been just dangled so lightly but you're starting to see that there's a much grander picture here.
Oh, of course there is. Yeah. I'm just curious to know, because I assume that, even Han Solo makes a reference to it on Cloud City, where you're talking about, thinking that the mining guild was, independent from the Empire, and then suddenly Vader shows up and just reminds us about how influential the Empire really are.
Right.
It just begs to question. And we saw it again in The Mandalorian, again with the mining guild and their influence on the outlying settlements on Tatooine. Like, they just seemed like they operate with a lot of impunity.
It's true. And they've got the Empire on speed dial.
Seriously.
Right? And it harkens back to what we talked about before, that even the machines that make the decisions that drive the galaxy forward still need raw materials. They still need people and ships and money, and that we're seeing that the Star Wars galaxy is a lot like our own in terms of, like the normal things that keep society functioning are still present. Labor unions and banks and, police and firefighters and militaries. And you're starting to see how much like our galaxy, except, we're way in the future.
With the Star Wars.
Apparently we're way in the future.
With a twist of Meluron.
That's right. Mantel mix.
That's it. That is the end of the episode. We get a very quick fade out and roll credits. Lots to unpack in this episode. I think we did a pretty good job. I think we hit everything. Did we miss anything?
Well, I've got a theory.
What do you got?
Omega states, I don't have a chip.
That's right.
But they don't scan her. They don't, attempt to verify that information.
True.
So with her hanging with the Bad Batch, and every week she's picking up more training.
Yep.
She could become their Achilles heel.
Yeah. There's every possibility of that. Did she turn, foil for them? I don't know.
And it would explain why Nala Se, held the bay doors.
Well, that's just it too.
Trained. Send her off with these guys. They will train her.
Yeah.
And at the right moment, we'll call her back.
Go ahead.
We still don't know which sort of side of the fence Nala Se is on. Is her loyalty to Omega or to the project? And she sort of indicates to Lama Su that they need to move forward with a project. So there is a question of her loyalty, because if her loyalty is to Omega, then she's an ally. And if her loyalty is, then you're absolutely right. Omega could be turned into a weapon.
She could be the ultimate sleeper. Still doesn't change the fact that she's got, 10-year-old noodly arms.
True. But they'll get better over the course of the show. She's lifting droid legs.
Yeah.
She's, she shows fear in her face and her eyes. She emotes very well, but she's brave as hell. She's brave as hell.
Superficially speaking, did we pick up this week that she's got a new addition to her outfit? She has a bandolier this week.
I didn't know. I noticed that her bow was on her back, but I didn't actually focus on the mechanism.
I didn't see any connective parts, but I'm pretty sure there's a spot here where, I don't know if I can find it in any of the images I got of her, but pretty sure she was wearing a bandolier this week.
Oh yeah, there it is on her shoulder. I see it.
Can you see it there?
Yeah. It's a little like a leather.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's really.
My instinct is to point at my screen for you people.
I think you can see it sticking off of her back here as she's hunched forward there.
And they all seem to have that sort of magnetic, throw your weapon to your back and it sticks there. Yeah.
I like how the translation to the 6-inch Black Series figures, where there's a slot in the backpack.
Very cool.
Where they just kind of can push them in.
Yeah, there's a couple of the clone troopers that have pegs in the hips, right?
Yeah.
There's some of those.
Presumably it's magnetic. And the more I think about it, the more I look at the Bad Batch, maybe they are more akin to my beloved Republic Commandos than I thought, because you go back and look at those guys in the video game, and they too have large backpacks that store their weapons.
It's true.
Yeah. I can be pretty forgiving of them. I like the way the show is going. I like this episode. I don't know if it stands out as a, best episode yet. I don't think it's that, but it's the episode we needed to have to move the story into the next act.
There's an insane amount of closure for being 7/16 of the way through. Less than half, and we've wrapped up 2 major sort of story arcs.
Big time.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if Rex is a major story arc, but they hinted at him in the second episode, and we have Rex resolution, if you will.
I think
certainly the inhibitor chips was something I thought they would push right to the end of the series and have a big dramatic sucker.
Yeah.
But, we've wrapped that up in a bow, minus perhaps an Omega chip. But I'm really excited, and like I said earlier, that just tells me that if we've wrapped up that stuff in a bow, that the next stuff is even bigger. When we thought we couldn't get bigger in The Mandalorian, we went to friggin' Tython. So, and then when we thought we couldn't get bigger than that, they gave us Luke friggin' Skywalker. And so I'm excited for the second half of the series to ostensibly start next week.
That's right. So we're 7 episodes into a 16 episode series. So like what, 40, almost 50% of the way through. And man, I know there's lots more to come. I don't really have any speculation where I think we're going next week, because I think, like you say, we've gotten major resolution to a couple of things, so we can ostensibly go in any direction next week.
Well,
without their chips.
Direction.
Which way?
Yeah.
Well, based on your observation, Hank, about the Mantell mix, and they've been there for like 11 missions.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I think we're about to find out just how far the Empire has come.
Okay.
Because they get that call saying, "Here's your clones."
So yeah, I mean that's another. So for me, that's a loose plot thread. Is our frenemy Sid? Is she like? Are they ever going to get an opportunity to get square with her, or is she just going to be done with them and turn them in for the big score?
Well, she got short at the end of their interaction. You know, like certainly that. That situation has always been going to go bad. It's just a matter of time. But I think maybe they could just leave without, there's no reason for them to return there after missions, short of them looking for them too. And are she going to waste resources on that? Because without their chips now, they have there's a whole other freedom.
Absolutely, there is.
And so we might see them branch off into a whole nother. I strongly feel that they're knowing that the chips are removable, that the middle act will be about finding Crosshair, and that the last act will be either the death of or the redemption of Crosshair. Right. And I think that's probably and they're not huge leaps. They're probably going to have to come as story beats. So we're not Nostradamus or anything here, but I think that you're going to definitely see those two things. And I'm actually blown away that they wrapped up that the inhibitor chip already.
That's the big wild card, I guess, is, for me, will Crosshair redeem, or will he willfully remain with the Empire, even if they do get it out?
It's we can use the movie Frozen as an example.
Sure.
The original sort of screenplay for the Frozen or the original cut of the movie had the villain not being redeemed at all. And it tested fairly well with audiences, but then they screened a version where there was the redemption arc, and it tested way better. And since then we've seen more and more redemption arcs for villains.
Yeah.
And I think it's a Disney trend, and I think people want to like the villains at the same time as not like them. So it's probably more likely than not in a children's show that we get a redemption arc. But he's like I said before, he certainly looks like a death trooper, and maybe they'll just take his genetics and turn that into the enemy, and we'll get Crosshair back. And wow, 9 more episodes.
That would be like super fulfilling for me. Either way, to be honest with you, like I'm excited to see which way he goes, and part of me actually, because it goes against trope. Particular Star Wars, I actually hope that he does remain a villain. I think that talking about the tragedy of living inside their own heads and being compelled, and then having the realization that that programming was there, but there is a component, there's a willful component, and if he does stay, that tells you that just like you or I or anybody else who's naturally born, there are good people and there are evil people.
That's right.
And I think that would be a super cool twist. One more thing about this episode. Did anybody get the impression that, I actually thought for a moment that the Batch would use Rex as a way to break away from Sid? They could have picked up and just left with him, and that would have been okay.
Yeah. The only problem would have been that the again, like plot armor, it would have dragged them too much into the main storyline, and I think that they're trying to, I think that they're weaving the other characters in and out of their storyline to give them that forward momentum.
Yeah,
but I think that them absolutely just Rex is part of the team now, and we want to see that. Oh yeah, we'd love to watch Rex every episode, but I think this is their story, and so I think that it may just. We're doing something different now, maybe plot armor. And we know we can always return to Rex at any time.
Yeah.
I don't think their thing is about fighting the Empire like the Rebellion. I think their thing is more about self-discovery amid the new dynamic of the universe.
Right.
With an underlying theme of family.
Oh, absolutely.
Because him saying, I got to do what's best for Omega and my squad.
Yeah.
That's another dad moment for him.
Oh, big time it is. Yeah.
I might recut the Brady Bunch song and sing the Bad Batch, and then we'll all look at each other in the Bad Batch.
Here's the story.
Yeah, I could rewrite the lyrics. We went 2 really shiny blaster guns.
Yeah, really.
Could be great.
I thought, the possibility of them leaving with Rex would have, sped up the frenemy thing with Sid, that she could go full villain at that point, and she could become the next sort of like on their tail, like on top of the Empire, on top of the cloners. Now you've got a boss after you.
Yeah, that kind of Mexican standoff with a bunch of, I think you'll see that arc come to a conclusion in terms of her.
I just think it's only a matter.
They become worth more money, especially now that the mining guild. If you think that the mining guild coordinates with the bounty hunting guild, coordinates with, that like there's union bosses that talk.
Yeah.
And now that we've made the phone call to the Empire.
They
might check her. They might come to her, and if she's just going to sell them out.
If that puts more heat on the Batch, that puts more heat on her, because she's harboring them.
Right. So she could literally either go 2 ways here. She could turn them in, or she could go,
you got to go.
I like you enough. Get the F out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm still not sure which way she's going to go. That's why I keep calling her the frenemy. Like, she kind of paints this picture that like the mutually beneficial arrangement, but then keeps, punctuating that with, but you better do as I say.
How many times has Hondo Inako saved a major character's ass only to just stab them in the back at the end of the episode?
Absolutely.
Dozens of times, and we love Hondo Inako.
Absolutely. He's the Doug Judy of the show.
Heck yeah.
Little Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference there for you.
That's awesome, bro.
All right, guys, that's it. We did it. Another episode in, and this one was episode 7. Episode 7. Oh my God, I got to get a new mess. Episode 7, Battle Scars. Yeah, we definitely we saw some scars in this one.
Perfect.
Emotional scars, mental scars, physical scars.
Let the healing begin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So realistically, that's the snack food sharing item there. Yeah,
absolutely. The Star Wars version of Chicago mix.
Fantastic.
We now know that it's Mantel mix. All right, guys, that's it for me. I guess we'll catch you on the next one. All right, I'm going to get it right this week. Join us next week as we review another episode of The Bad Batch right here on our show, The Fan Batch. Catch us next week. Same batch time, same batch channel.
Boom.
Excellent.
All right, guys. Catch you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.